be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones.
Oh, Saint Greta, why don't you come down off the cross? We need the wood. You know, I'm in my early 50s, and there's always been some kind of climate emergency. It's whether it's been the acid rain, the new ice age, a hole in the ozone, the Amazon rainforest. Yet nothing has changed except higher taxes and loss of freedom. Welcome to the Fringe Files, where we examine today's top cultural trends that shape what we believe and how we behave and define our truth from a biblical worldview. So our first clip today is from John Stossel interview or video on YouTube, and as always, I will put the clips down in my show notes.
Warmed up around 1 degree Celsius since 1900, and life expectancy doubled the industrialized democracies, and yet that temperature ticks up another half a degree, and the entire system crashes. That's the most absurd belief.
I recently moderated this debate on climate change at the Heartland Institute. Well, not a debate, because the alarmists who were invited didn't show. Heartland invited many.
Please come over here and sit next to that place and let's have a discussion. There are a lot more people want to hear what you have to say.
Climate alarmists never agree to debate.
We'd love to offer you the airtime. We will give it to you. I'll give you a special phone number that goes to this phone.
I invited Al Gore on my show often, but he would never come.
In order to solve the climate crisis,
he makes a lot of speeches, but won't respond to people who disagree. It's too bad that the alarmists won't debate, because so much of what they say deserves debate.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
12 years.
Well, and in 12 years, it'll be 12 more years.
David Legates is a professor of climatology at the University of Delaware. Pat Michaels is former president of the American Association of State Climatologists. Willie Soon is an astrophysicist.
It's all about arm waving, it's about emotion, about sending out kids in protest. We have nothing to do with the science.
This group pointed out that even if the planet warms by 5 degrees, humans can adjust. People in Holland did years ago.
They said, we're going to adapt to the fact that we're a low-lying country, and we're going to build these dikes, and we're going to build these pumps. Are you telling me that the people in Miami are so dumb that they're just going to sit there and drown?
You acknowledge, though, the water is rising.
Yes, the water has been rising for approximately 20,000 years and probably will continue.
But we can adapt, like Holland has, except the alarmists say hurricanes and other storms are getting worse.
It's getting stronger and stronger. The winds are getting harder and harder.
No, they aren't. You can take a look at all the hurricanes that around the planet. We can see them since 1970 because we got global satellite coverage. Right. And we can measure their power, and we can add up their power. And there is no significant increase whatsoever. There is no relationship between hurricane activity and the surface temperature of the planet.
The claim that hurricanes are getting worse and the 12-year deadline were 2 of 4 myths I heard the Heartland panel convincingly debunk. Myth number 3 was that government action today will save us.
We have to act now.
The Obama administration's model projects that the amount of global warming that would be saved for going to zero emissions tomorrow, you don't know how to do that, put you back in the Stone Age, but let's just say we did it, would be 0.14 of a degree Celsius.
So no real effect on the climate, but
you'll sure have an impoverished, dark country, won't you?
Myth number 4, the idea that carbon dioxide is carbon pollution that just does harm and threatens the food supply.
There are places on Earth where it is just greening up like crazy.
So if you're really concerned about the plants, more carbon dioxide makes them not just grow faster, but also makes them more water efficient.
Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, but it also helps feed the world.
A lot of people pretend to know about climate, pretend to have studied it, pretend to come up with these answers, and then make these proclamations to scare you so that you'll do what we want you to do.
But if what the alarmists say is not true, Why would the International Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations, go along with the exaggerations?
Governments like control. Most governments want to keep control, and governments get bigger and bigger over time.
IPCC does stand for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Carbon dioxide becomes that molecule by which we can take control of your lives, of your efforts, and everything that goes on.
Are they right? It's confusing when there are so many serious people who are so worried. I wish there were a real debate. Why won't the other side debate?
Our next clip is from geologist Ian Plimmer.
The key thing with talking about global warming is when do you start measuring?
Yeah.
If you started measuring 38 years ago, there's been no change. If you started measuring 150 or in the 1850s, then there's been a general warming of about 0.7 degrees Celsius with 3 periods of slight warming and 3 periods of slight cooling. If you started to measure from the medieval times, then in medieval times we've had a cooling of about 4 degrees Celsius since, say, 1200 AD. If you wanted to measure from the time of when the Vikings first appeared, about 750 AD, then we've had a distinct warming. If you want to measure when a temperature trend from the time of Jesus, then we've had a cooling of about 5 degrees Celsius. So if you're telling me that the planet's warming, my question is, since when?
So here's the wrap-up. The sun is the planet's primary source of heat. Our temperatures are always influenced by the sun and have always been influenced by the sun. It has cycles of activity from the Little Ice Age to this current decade. The Earth's climate has always been changing. The fact that humanity did not and cannot impact the sun's natural cycles is the bottom line of the issue. As far as carbon dioxide, plants need carbon dioxide to thrive. The ocean holds 50 times more CO2 than the atmosphere. If the sea warms, CO2 is released, and if it cools, it absorbs CO2 from the air. This happens on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. On the average, CO2 in the whole atmosphere stays around for a few years before going back into the upper levels of the ocean or into its soil. Hey, I want to say thank you all for being part of the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on social media. Also, we have a couple of books on Amazon. The first one is Understanding the Bible Made Easy. So if you have a hard time reading the Bible and understanding or memorizing verses, it's a great book. The second one is a study guide for women on prayer. The links for all of our books and follow us on social media and our web pages are in the links of our show notes. Thank you, and we'll see you again next week.